It's that time of year again, kiddies, and no, I don't mean the time to change your tampon. That'd be a little weird. It's only the ending of November here. But anyway, I figure I've done a lot of driving and most wanted to over the past couple months. I've given cars a chance that I didn't think were any good, and it's nice. It's opened my eyes to a lot of things. It's confirmed what I know about a lot of cars, but there are a couple of newer cars here that I just never imagined I would be driving a lot, let alone putting in my top 10 list. And some long-standing champions, while certainly dethroned a little bit, they haven't been removed from the list entirely in most cases. So what we see here is a comprehensive, more nuanced, and just a better analyzed list. I mean, I go into much more detail when I test drive cars now. Obviously, there's no point doing it now because I've driven every car, and what we have here is, for all intents and purposes, the definitive list. So, without any further ado, number one is the mighty Chevrolet Corvette ZR1. You're probably wondering, how the hell did this car get here? This car was a nobody, and now it's the new top dog. Well, you have to see, it has some things in common with the LFA. Like the LFA, it is narrow. Like the LFA, it is quick. And like the LFA, it offers relatively amazing performance. But it does so in a different way. Whereas the LFA is extraordinarily grippy, the ZR1 is extraordinarily micro-drifty. Obviously, you have to have some finesse when doing this. You can't just drive like an idiot and expect it to do things. So this is a car that demands attention, demands a degree of finesse and expertise from the driver. But the ceiling for performance relative to the LFA is a lot higher. I mean, I remember, whenever I go lapping with the ZR1, I go lapping with the LFA. They're very different cars in transitions and turns. Because see, what's really astounding about the ZR1 is that not only is it faster in a straight line, both in terms of acceleration and top speed than the LFA, but it's also just as wide, if not a little narrower, and you can dart around with it even easier. For me, it feels like a much faster version of the Alfa Romeo 4C, which is another car on the list, but I'll get to that later. So it's the ZR1 just outshines the LFA. I didn't think it was it was possible to do it, but I learned how to manhandle it. I learned how to trust it and just get good. And whereas the LFA, it'll like with a lot of these cars, it encourages you to just go faster and take more risks, but it only does it to a point. The ZR1, I can say with absolute certainty, is that it's a car that its only limit is its driver. Whereas a lot of these other cars, especially the Aventadors, there's a limit with what the car can deliver before you start to have understeer and some other strange quirks, like non-linear response when you're drifting. Like that's another mark against the LFA. But obviously, there's still room for it on this list. It's still a very capable car, so that's why the LFA is at number 2. Because relative to other cars on this list, it's still more or less the benchmark. And it just does things a little better. I mean, even better than cars that are faster than it too. As its handling is more important than outright speed to me, which explains my third choice as well. Meet the new number 3 car, the Alfa Romeo 4C, another car that I didn't think much of. I mean, I drove it around, I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of fun, but no, this car is kind of amazing. It's not the fastest car at all. I mean, it'll go 190 plus with nitrous. It just takes a while to get there without using it. The motor runs out of steam circa 165. But at least it can actually go faster if you need to. And, like the ZR1 and the LFA, it's very, very light on its feet. It's even more maneuverable than the Maserati GT MC Stradale, which is the number 4 car. Hint, spoiler alert, hint. But, the 4C manages to pull off being maneuverable and being quick without becoming, I guess, one-dimensional, because it still has some top speed. I mean, 190 in the sports class is not bad. I mean, it's not amazing, but, it's better than the Countach, which is drag limited to about 185. It's better than the 911 Turbo 3.0, which is also drag limited to about 180, somewhere in the high 170s or low 180s. So, and yet it's worse than other cars. It's worse than the B2 and the Gallardo or the GT2 or the Carrera. But this car is just more maneuverable, and it is the narrowest car I've ever driven. It is unbelievable where you can fit this car, and it's short too. But it does so, it pulls off these tight proportions without looking awkward, and so I give it a lot of credit. It's a great little car. I've won plenty of upset victories with it, along with the number 1 and number 2 cars, obviously. And I've also done plenty of upset victories with the Maserati GT MC Stradale. It's not say it's bruised but not broken. What used to be it only moved down 2 slots from number 2 to number 4. And it's I still love it for all the reasons that I did before, especially if you're in a Grand Tour only event. I mean, yeah, a Panamera Turbo S will beat you in a straight line, but he's gonna have a hell of a time maneuvering around things. Whereas this car, yeah, it's not as fast in a straight line, but it's very maneuverable, even more so than the DBS. That's actually Grand Tour, even more so than the V12 Vantage, which also, hint spoiler, made the list as well, although not quite as high as I would have liked, just because the Maserati is just a little bit more maneuverable. But this, like I said, I've had plenty of good moments with the Maserati. And I know I'll have a lot more. I also know I'll have more moments with the Marussia B2. Despite having not a lot of videos on the B2, it's an amazing car. I've been truly amazed at what this car can do. It is deceptively quiet. It's not like an LFA or a 01 that just goes whoa. Like it's not. It doesn't sound fast at all. It just sounds kind of docile. I mean, but you look at the speedometer, you're going 160. This is probably the fastest overall car in the sports class. I mean, between it and the GT2, it would be a really close drag race. But where this car shines is that the GT2 has similar dimensions and it's just a little flimsier, whereas this car it's almost as maneuverable, but it's a little bit stronger, and so that's why I give it the nod. The fact that you can, the ceiling for performance with the B2 is just a little bit higher. I mean, it's higher than a lot of other cars in its class, but not in a way that's overpowered. I mean, that's assuming you're a good driver. I mean, the way this thing drifts is very similar to some other cars. It's quick, but it's linear, which is exactly what you want with a car. You don't want to have it like the LFA, where it's has so much grip it's kind of goofy or difficult to make a micro drift when you want to go fast. The B2 gives you a chance, and the B2 gives you a choice between how badly you want to beat your enemies, badly or really badly, which is good. Now, of course, there are other cars too in the sports class. I mean, the sports class also, that's their source for our number 6 car, the Gallardo, coming in behind the number 5 car, the Marussia B2. The Gallardo and the R8 are both at number 6. I figure the cars are pretty similar. The only difference between the two is that the R8 is heavier, but also has more top speed, acceleration, and a little bit more burn nitrous power. But, of course, it's not as fluid. And I'm always going to choose a car that's more maneuverable over a car that is less maneuverable. So, I mean, if you really want to get nerdy here, I'll say the Gallardo is number 6, the R8 GT is 6.5. But, again, I've had great moments with both of these cars. I mean, I really, really enjoy these cars. They're consistent, they're quick, and they handle dirt to tarmac transitions very, very well. I mean, just like pretty much all the all-wheel drive cars do. But it's especially fun, like on Redshift, you can just cut right in between, and it just is planted. I mean, even under hard braking, you just got to be. It's a great driving car. Both of these are, especially. I just wish that they were fixed roof coupes. I've never been a convertible guy. Now enter number 7. One of the I guess and then the 7.5. Number 7 is the mighty 911 GT2, a car that is pretty much a Carrera S except just a little bit quicker and a little bit lighter. I mean, this car is very, very fluid. I mean, this is the closest rival you're going to get to the B2 in this sports class, in my opinion. I mean, it would be a very close race on most tracks. My friend Afternoon 7 has nothing but good things to say about this car in the B2 as well. So I believe this was his number 1 favorite car for a long time, and I really don't blame him. I mean, just like the Carrera, it's quick, but it's predictable, and it won't get you killed. Unfortunately though, the GT2 it's just not as strong, and so you're used to the Carrera S, which is kind of a brawler in a lot of ways. It's like an enlightened brawling car, but it doesn't do so without breaking the balance of the class. Whereas the GT2 is a little bit more, I guess, fragile. That is the term, but it's a good deal quicker. I mean, coming from the Carrera S, and if you just drive the Carrera S and don't drive the GT2, you think, oh, the Carrera S is amazing. Oh, this thing's so maneuverable and it's so fast, and then you drive the GT2 and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe they just made a good thing better. But like I said, it comes at a price. So it's a price I'm willing to pay more often than not. I mean, you can't go wrong with something that's quicker and more maneuverable. So, and then number 7.5 is the Porsche 911 Carrera S. Again, it's the fact that it's on the list above a lot of other cars, above 3 exotics. Another spoiler alert. I think that's a very meritorious thing. It's just that competition has really taken a toll. I mean, the fact that if cars like the 4C or the B2 didn't exist, the Carrera and the GT2 would be up a lot higher. But they aren't because new competition has entered the fray. But I will never write off the Carrera S or the GT2 because they're both amazing cars and they're a lot of fun to drive. Nor will I write off the Ford GT, which is coming in at number 8, which is still, in my opinion, one of the best exotic cars you can get. I mean, if it wasn't for the LFA and the ZR1, this fucking thing would be in first place by a lot. Because not only is it, it's a lot more. It's more like the ZR1 than the LFA. I will say that, but it's just not as fast, and it's a little bit. I can't tell if it's wider. I didn't really look into that too much, but I've never had issues squeezing this thing between gaps. I've never had any problems at all. So I'd like to think it's got the nice tight proportions of the ZR1, despite having really wide tires at all four corners. But like I said, I love the Ford GT for all the reasons I said earlier. Between the nice acceleration, I mean, you're not going to win many drag races with the thing. Let's be honest. But it sounds amazing, and it handles good, and that's oftentimes all you need. That's all that I needed back in the day. Back when I drive this car a lot. Obviously, there are better cars, so the Ford GT sits around a little more than I'd like it to, but that's just the way it is. Don't worry, though. I'll never forget about this car. Coming in at number 9 is the Lamborghini Aventador. Yes, the car that is... Actually, I think it's the widest car here. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is, without a doubt, the widest car on this list. Overall, including out of the honorable mentions. Another spoiler alert. But this is a car that I've put a lot of miles on. I mean, this is it's not as visceral as you would think it would be, though. I mean, it's actually kind of a tame car. It's very hard to spin it out. It's most of the problems I encounter with it is just the width, and also the fact that, as I was hinting at earlier, some of these cars, there's a limit of what the car can deliver within its chassis. The Aventador is no exception to this. The fact that it's after a certain point, after a certain amount of G-forces in the corner, or rather, once you just push it too hard, it's going to start to understeer, and then it doesn't matter what you do there. You're going to start to lose time and lose speed, and that's just not a good thing. But up to that point, it's great, and while it is definitely difficult to get this thing in and out of tight gaps, it's very nimble. I mean, that's not even factoring in how wide this car is and how heavy this car is in real life. It's pretty incredible. I've had a lot of fun with the Aventador, and on the more open tracks, I would probably give this the nod over the ZR1 or especially the LFA. But it's when you get into really tight tracks that are also kind of fast. I mean, I'm thinking Turbulence is one of those. I mean, Turbulence is fast, but it's tight. And that's where you really, really run into problems with these cars, because it gets narrow, and it also gets fast, and it also gets tight. And it's something these cars can't handle. The Aventador J, number 10, fares a little worse because it's more one-dimensional. I mean, it handles exactly the same as the Aventador, it's just quicker, and it has less top speed. It's still a great car. Like I said, both these cars, the Aventador and the Aventador J, have been very good in campaigns. I mean, being able to outrun in a lot of ways, and also outmaneuver, surprisingly, other cars, and the good launch out of the hole really helps them. It also helps cars like the Gallardo and the R8. It's not a coincidence that just under half of the cars here are all-wheel drive. I mean, it's not a coincidence at all. So, now we have other things. Of course, we have to have the honorable mentions. Now, replacing the overall honorable mention, the most honorable mention car of them all is going to be the Impreza. It's a car that I didn't really think a lot of until we started to drive it, and yeah, it definitely trades off some acceleration and top speed relative to the 1M, but it does things so much better. It's so much more maneuverable. And not to mention it handles dirt to tarmac transitions a lot better too. So, that's, the Impreza WRX STI hatchback, that's going to be both the best overall honorable mention car and also the honorable mention of the everyday class. Now, in the exotic class, we have the beloved 918 concept, and contrary to semi-popular belief, you can drive this car well with Aero Body Pro on. You just have to be kind of careful. I mean, with jumps, you have to set up early and make sure you don't dive too much with the nose, and it's only on certain tracks that you have to do upgrade switching in the middle of a race to straighten out the course. Under most conditions, it's fine. And this car will set a hell of a lap on Turbulence. I mean, I actually prefer this to the Aventador. I prefer this to the Ford GT even on Turbulence, because it's narrower than I know for a fact it's narrower than the Aventador, and it's probably maybe a little wider than the Ford GT, but not enough to make a difference. All while offering better acceleration and just better maneuverability and better fluidity when dodging and weaving and whatnot. The only problem is you just can't drive this car everywhere like you can on trucks like Turbulence or Redshift. Like you have to know that the car lacks downforce, and it's gonna drive a little goofy if you don't know what to do, and that just gets in the way. You shouldn't have to think about that when you're driving. Now, honorable mention in the sports class is going to be the V12 Vantage, another excellent car that I'd overlooked for a while. I thought that I'd seen all that I needed to see out of the sports class, but no. I thought about just putting in the R35 GTR for honorable mention and just calling it good, but I drove the two back to back on Turbulence. I did it on Blackout as well. I'm thinking these cars are worlds apart. The GTR in a straight line is going to be a lot faster, obviously, and I'm sure out of the hole and coming out of turns, it's going to be faster. But just like the Aventador and the Aventador J, the GTR, you're going to reach a point where there's going to be understeer, and you're going to start. The car is going to be writing checks that its ass can't cash, and that's just not fun at all. And you don't want you don't want to drive a car like that, especially if you're trying to punch above your belt. Whereas the V12 Vantage, it's a very fluid car. It's almost as maneuverable as the Maserati, but not quite, and it's also it lacks the acceleration and top speed of a lot of these other sports cars on the list. So you can understand why I don't rank it at like number 5 or number 6 or even number 4. But it's an excellent car. I really like the Aston Martini V12 Vantage. It's more than earned its place here. I just wish I'd learned about it sooner. Another Aston Martin that's earned its place here is the DBS, another Grand Tour special. Between this and the Maserati, it's not always easy to decide because they're both good, and just like the V12 Vantage, it's a little hamstrung. It's just not quite as maneuverable while offering similar speed. So why don't you just choose the more maneuverable car, the Maserati? That's my reasoning usually, but that's not to mark against the DBS at all. I actually would like to do a head-to-head between the DBS and the V12 Vantage, and just to see how similar or dissimilar they are. Anyway, we have the honorable mention of the muscle class, the Cobra 427, a car that is, while it is a little one-dimensional, it definitely lacks top speed, especially compared to a Boss 302 or Camaro ZL1. There's no denying it. This car is narrower than both, a lot more maneuverable than both, and overall, I just do better with it. Being able to dodge collisions and being able to just get in and start driving, that's neither the Boss 302 nor the Camaro ZL1 specialty. Especially the ZL1. I definitely like the car, and it's a good car if you need to go kill a bunch of douchebags in public games. But you're not going to have a fun time maneuvering around things. It's just, you really feel the weight of the platform. Whereas this Cobra 427, it's a real featherweight. It's definitely the most maneuverable car in the muscle class. And, while also having pretty good acceleration as well, mainly because it's really light and it's got a big motor and, classic muscle car formula. Now, the honorable mention for the race class is the Alfa Romeo, I'm an idiot, the Ariel Atom 500 V8. I used to be a fan of the M3 GTR, I still am, but on the shorter tracks, the Ariel Atom will always win. The way this car maneuvers, the way this car pulls, it's pretty ridiculous. And some friends of mine will be happy to vouch for me as well. I was hot lapping with my ZR1 on Turbulence, and there were a couple times when the Ariel Atom passed me outright. My friend Sparks just carried so much speed through turns. Again, the car doesn't weigh anything, so you can set up to microdrift extremely late and just point and shoot. It's, who cares about the crappy top speed of 170 something with short gears? You're not going to need top speed on a short track anyway. And this, I bet on Rat Race, the Ariel Atom would be downright impossible to beat. So that's it. That's all the cars. This went on a lot longer than I thought it would, although that's to be expected. There's a lot of explaining to do, and with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 additions, it's to be expected. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know I have. Expect more Most Wanted 2, GTA 4, maybe GTA 5 if I get drunk enough.